The death of equities. Oh man, I'm going there. There's a view of downtown Atlanta skyline where we're sitting in Tráfico. That's how we say it in Espanol, Tráfico. Over here is the old Braves Stadium. That's the old, whatever they call that stadium. What was that called? Some kind of park. Turner Field? Yeah, I think Turner Field. And now Georgia State owns that. So tax-free, baby. All right, so I figured just while I'm driving back from the Mises Institute, I wish I had some water. I gotta go pee! Anyway, so you'll see Midtown. Oh, this is downtown. We'll go through Midtown, we're Georgia Tech, then we'll go through Buckhead. I'll probably talk that whole time. All right, so there's a long time ago, 1979, if memory serves, 1980, Business Week. I don't even know if they still make Business Week magazine anymore. Excuse me, coronavirus. They had a, oh man, excuse me. And the front page of their magazine said the death of equities. All right, this is when PE ratios were like at 8, dividend yields like at 6. Now I'm gonna sneeze. Interest rates are going through the roof, and it was pretty bad. Of course, that's the most ideal time to have invested. Of course, no one knew that in hindsight. Now it's the exact opposite. Why am I saying the death of equities? And am I saying you should not invest? Inherently, I'm not saying you should not invest, obviously. However, you knew that would be a big fat button there. Chattanooga, Greenville, Huntsville, I'm telling you, that's the magic triangle going forward, my friends. Chattanooga, Greenville, Huntsville, right there. Going forward, equities are at, I hate to say all-time highs because they're always at all-time highs. I mean, throughout history, equities are higher than they were a couple years ago, which means they're always at all-time highs. However, can we just acknowledge one thing and one thing only? We basically had, 8 decades of stocks in the modern era. How many of those decades have the average investor been involved in the market? Since, 1980, all right? So 1980, when the 401k started, based in 1974 through ERISA, but really no one started 401ks until about 1980 or so. So we've had 1980 to 1990, 1990 to 2000, that's 2 decades. We've had 4 decades of the real modern era of investing. All right, 1980s, 1990s, boom, man, boomsday. 2000s, horrible, in the teens, boomsday. All right. Because we've had a lot of investors coming in the market for the first time, all right? And so as such, what does that mean? Well, we've had some serious runs of markets, some serious runs. 3 of the 4 decades in the modern era have just gone through the roof. Is that sustainable? Think about it, man. There are now, by a factor of, I don't even know how much, there are more mutual funds and ETFs than there are actually stocks to buy. Think about that. There's more money sloshing around than there are actually stocks to buy. How can that, that doesn't make any sense, does it? So our buildings, now what's the PE ratios? All right, I just grant you the PE ratios are high. And I'm not one to sit there and say the PE ratios are, oh my good, nosebleed. I don't think so, relative to the yields on bonds. But still, at the end of the day, PE ratios are high. No other way around that. Bond prices are still high, not as high as they were 6 months ago, but they're still quite high historically. There's a downtown, the Capitol, where good old Brian Kemp did not overlook to make sure we had election integrity. That's for damn sure. But anyway, so we got a market that's historically, again, in the modern era. Now, I know there are some people who invest in the 70s. I know there are a few. There weren't that many mutual funds back in the 60s. There just weren't. There's a book that I saw at the Mises Institute, which I put up on my YouTube channel. I got to read about the history of retirement. Well, what happened was, in the 1920s and whatnot, TIA CREF is interesting because teachers essentially had no pension. And so basically what would happen is for a teacher to retire, he retired into poverty because there was no pension, if that makes sense. It wasn't just teachers, everybody. We still had a lot of farmers out there, they had no pension. Now, what the interesting thing is we actually valued older people back then. So even though they didn't have a pension, they still had value in terms of the farming skills and the skill set of building stuff. It's a very interesting dynamic. We've simply gone away from that because now we can Google everything and find our everything we need, right? That's not. We're allowing the elderly of our society to just dwindle away without recognizing the value they bring. But anyway, be it as it may, no one had pensions back then. All right, so basically, we've only had, this is essentially the 1940s, I guess, after the World War, any kind of pensions, any kind of retirement plans at all. We just hardly any people had any back then. So since the retirement phase has kicked in, and Social Security and whatnot, it's only been 80 years since we've had Social Security, a safety net, since we had pensions, since we had 401ks. It's really only been 40 years. There is no history of retirement planning before this. All right, now, what is retirement planning contingent on? It was contingent on investment planning, I should say, on being able to buy stocks or investments. Investments can be bonds, government bonds. You always be able to buy those because the government's always in debt. Stocks, all right, stocks are based on earnings. That's all there is to it. Stocks, the valuation of stocks are based on earnings and dividends. It's not based on anything else. If there is no earnings, there is no valuation ultimately of stocks. I don't know how else to say this. How does a stock get earnings? Well, it gets earnings by producing a product that people can buy or by being a monopoly. All right, and that's just a fact. So being a monopoly where you can build barriers to entry for competition, you still have to have a product to sell. All right, so government, the more fascistic we're going, which we are, will create monopolies for sure. So some stocks will do okay. Are they going to make tons of money though, or are they going to be more like utilities? Well, they're going to be more utilities, man. Just think about it. The Googles of the world, just all these companies, the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Costcos. Yes, they're being bigger and bigger and bigger. They will be regulated more and more and more. I'm just telling you, man, that is what's coming down the pike. The heavy hand of regulation is coming. Without question. Now, they'll still be able to make a profit, and you'll still be able to do okay, but it's going to be no different than a utility stock. Nothing wrong with utility stocks, but in terms of growth, there ain't none. No, because the reason why utility stocks pay a dividend is because there is no growth. They're regulated on their upside. Same thing is going to happen with the market. Again, should that mean you not invest? No. But if we're going to a bigger and bigger monopoly, because it's harder and harder to bring a company to market with all the regulation, be more and more private companies that stay private, simply because they don't want to go to the SEC, the 10 Qs, all that crap that accountants just got to do. You got all these different, the hell they call them, gravestone, tombstone things. All this stuff's nuts. But you can't have more mutual funds than stocks. You can, but at some point you say the stocks are. At some point that doesn't make any sense. That there's more. What's the word? What's a mutual fund called? Open-ended investment can only buy so many stocks. So what happens? Well, inherently you inflate these stocks without question because there's more and more money chasing fewer and fewer goods. And that's inflationary for sure. And less and less earnings. And then ultimately you're going to have more and more people saying, I need the money. I got to live. And there's going to be more volatility. The whole thing is going to be regulated. So you can see a mile away that the market is going to have we just went through downtown. We'll be coming up to Midtown here shortly, just in case you're interested in Atlanta. I think we're going to turn around. You'll be able to see it over here to the left. So that's Midtown right there. Georgia, is that still downtown? That might be downtown. Georgia Tech's Midtown. Anyway, this is just stuff I'm thinking about. Maybe I'll show you some of this right here. That's pretty cool. Georgia Power, Georgia State's down here. We got bracket busted yet. I didn't know real NCAA tournament was going on. That's how ignorant I am of college sports, any sports anymore. So what is the best way to invest if the death of equities is here? When I say death, I'm not saying you're not going to make any money. I'm just saying I think this is why, again, I'm pessimistic on the markets in terms of historical returns. I think you need to be too. That does not mean they're going to give you negative returns, but there's going to be more volatility, all right? There's going to be wild swings simply because you have fewer and fewer companies that are traded publicly, more and more money sloshing around in there, and then ultimately you're going to have more and more people selling because there's going to be, I tell you, man, people act like they like volatility. They don't when it happens. I'm just telling you right now. And on top of that, more and more older people who are getting out of the market to fund retirement, and there's less younger people who are coming into the market with money because they got so much college debt. So what's going to happen? More volatility, less upside returns. It's just going to happen. And so how do you, A, protect yourself? B, how do you invest? I'm telling you, man, I think about this a lot. because I think about this myself, my own 401k, my own money. I don't have 401k, my own money right now. It's like, all right, 10 years from now, what would I wish I had more of than I have right now? All right. And I think you got to say, it's got to be land, a real estate of some sort. Now, does that mean being a landlord? Hells no. Why? Because we've seen what happens with the regulation. There's Midtown right ahead of us, by the way. We've seen what happens with or is that Buckhead? That might be, we'll have to come around. We see, Atlanta's kind of like Phoenix, by the way, just real quick. Phoenix had like Camelback, you had downtown, like 3 different downtowns in Phoenix. Atlanta's kind of the same thing. And then you got Cobb County over there, East Cobb, where the new SunTrust Stadium is. That's like his own downtown. That's not a part of Atlanta. Then you got downtown, Midtown, Buckhead. Then you got out in the various suburbs, the King and Queen, 400 North, which I drive by all the time. Anyway, so what would you wish you had more of 10 years from now than you do right now? I gotta think it's land, right? Because land can provide stuff, i.e. food, resources. Land can provide stuff. Does that mean you don't have any stocks? No, it does not. It does not. But real estate, real estate scares me from a rental real estate investment, simply because the landlord stuff is, we've seen what's going on now with the tenants. I remember when I was growing up in hardcore music, squatters' rights. And you're like, no one had a clue what squatters were. Squatters are just people living. There are people taking over your property, living there in your property. And I say, squatters' rights. Why would you have a right to my property? Try putting somebody out in Boston, man. Try putting out a squatter. Yeah, good luck with that. Essentially, they've taken over your real estate. It's bullcrap. Now, is there money to be made in there? Sure. How do you do it? I don't know. But you want to deal with the insanity of rental real estate, given the fact that Joe Biden and the CDC, man, Fauci can say, hey, you can't put people out. You're like, why is the CDC saying this? This is nuts. The CDC is telling you in Atlanta, Georgia, you can't put people out if they don't pay their rent. It's insane. I think at the end of the day, though, you got to look. I think about it. I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm still gonna have equity, just in case I'm wrong. But I'm just telling you, where would you wish you were 10 years from now that you don't have right now? And I just think there's only so much land out there, and places that you can go to grow things, where you can plant a tree today that 10 years from now will be fruitful and bountiful. That you can have an apple tree on, a place where you can go live. For cheap, if that makes sense. I'm telling you, man. And I don't, like my man in Iowa, I think, he slaughters hogs for a living. I forgot his name off the top of my head. But that kind of skill, because it's not just going to be the retirement of the future. Won't just be living off your stocks at 4%. Because I don't think this is sustainable. And I know that sounds negative. I guess it kind of is in a way. But here's Midtown, by the way. Here's Georgia Tech on my left, which you can't see. CNN. There's that Varsity hot dog place right there. See that V right there? That's Varsity hot dog place. But the retirement of the future is going to be different than what it is today. I mean, it's going to be like the older days where you're still working, but you'll be working maybe in the fields, not like under a freaking subsistence life, but more you're going to provide more for yourself. There's going to be more robots, I grant you, more AI, I grant you, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be more localized economies. They're going to have to be by nature, because the just-in-time inventory stuff is just, we've seen it doesn't work. It works until it doesn't, and when it doesn't, it's bad. And I was reading someplace in Texas, they locked down. I think they were like 3 days away from the entire grid going kaput. And then, who knows what would have happened then? That would have been ugly. And again, how many times do we luck out before we recognize that, man, there's we're walking a thin line here. And I'm not trying to be paranoid. I'm just trying to tell you, where would you rather be 10 years from now? What is the best bet for investing that can make your retirement as safe and as comfortable as possible? Is it equities, where you have more mutual funds chasing the actual number of investments that are out there? I don't think so. Again, I'm not saying don't invest in them. I'm just saying it's got to be part of a diversified portfolio. Again, going back to gold and precious metals, silver, going back to real estate. Again, I think it's land. When I mean land, it could be just a freaking single wide on, some guys on a piece of property up in, freaking north of Chattanooga. I don't know. But I'm telling you, man, I think there's got to be a place where you can grow some food. You can have a place there, SCAD. That's the Atlanta, the hard thing of Atlanta. So I finally got through Atlanta. Good night. That only took freaking an hour. Literally took 45 minutes to get through Atlanta. But it's got to be something to do with productivity, where you can produce something that will pay you in goods and services. All right. And again, an apple tree. An apple tree pays you in goods. It pays you in food. You see what I'm saying? You got to invest in education. Learn how to slaughter hogs. Learn how to freaking grow blackberries. Learn how to do something where you're not relying on the grid to give you your food and your sustainability. Learn how to dig a well. All this stuff, man. I'm telling you. Learn how to put some solar photovoltaic panels up. All that, because that is going to be a huge asset in the future that you might not have now. Learn how to do this, because 10 years from now, you might say, man, I'm glad I have that skill set. Invest in that for the skill set that you can use in your retirement. And that doesn't mean you got to be 65 years old and hanging up my job. Just means you got to be able to say, I'm hanging up my job, I'm going self-sufficient. Now, look, I'm not saying don't get in stocks. Please, please, please. I have everything I have still in the markets, I'm telling you right now. But I think about it, I say, where is the ball bouncing? What am I missing? And if the markets do go where I think it could, what would I wish I had? Now, if the markets continue to go what they have done for the last 4 decades, 3 of the last 4, then I'll be happy I was in the market. So you want to have one foot in both sides. That's the ultimate hedge. I hope this makes sense. Love to hear your thoughts. See ya.